Wild.
I'm Autumn.
And I'm Fel. And this is going to be our episode 2 of our new Inner Wild podcast.
Yep.
So, as described in the last one, this one changed things a little bit. I'm basically going to go through how I discovered about myself and my experiences with my therianthropy. And Autumn's going to pitch in a few things here and there that are relevant. So, what happens with this, it's something that I've always had. Like, I feel like I definitely was born with it. And it's something that I really didn't notice or realize that it was any different until later on in life. I grew up in a hunting and fishing family, so I was always out in the woods, and that helped. I always felt at home there and things like that. I've always had an affinity for canines in particular. Some of that probably has to do with having dogs in the house at all times. Mm. But, for example, I'd get down and I'd play with the dogs on like a little bit more of a dog-to-dog basis than like someone playing with a dog with their toys. Mm. And a few other things that crop up early now in hindsight. A few times I got in trouble on the playground in like elementary school, and the first thing that happens if I got in a fight or just got in a little tiff with kids, I would run off into the woods.
Like there's woods near your school?
Yeah, it's like on the side of a mountain, so it's in the Catskills, and just run off into the woods.
Hide?
Yeah, I did. I ran off and hid. That happened like 2 or 3 times, but that's where I went to hide, was in the woods. And I didn't really think anything weird of that until, like, I realized some of the teachers that worked there, they mentioned it. Like, years later, we met at, various things after graduating and stuff like that. Be like, I remember when he ran off into the woods. It's like, really? Nobody else did that?
I don't know. I think, maybe they're too scared to. How old were you?
5, 6.
Do you remember what you did in the woods? Were a few minutes you were in there, and then they would come get you?
At least till the end of recess, so, at least a half hour, 40 minutes.
Recess is no 40 minutes.
Yeah, well, in elementary school, like, you had, like, your hour nap time.
I think it's...
we had, like, half hour, 45-minute, like,
5, yeah.
recesses and things like that, kindergarten and first grade.
Oh, I'm thinking second grade. Never mind. My story. Yeah, I'm blurring my story with your story. Sorry.
Oh, no,
my memories
fine.
are bleeding, and I'm not even my thing.
Well, that's all right.
Okay. I was just trying to get a reference here.
And that was one thing that, like I said, in hindsight, I can see it. But at the time, and like up until I started thinking about my history of therianthropy and when things started showing, it never really occurred to me. And then something else that I realized thinking about it this past summer, I used to take swimming lessons at like 7 to 9 years old, in that range of time. And my mom would take us to the library after swimming lessons. From that age, I remember picking out books on vampires and werewolves. Ooh. But I very quickly dropped the vampires and just kept looking at the werewolf stories. Like copies of like old stuff and myths about werewolves.
The really classic stuff.
Yeah, and like lycanthropes and lore and history.
You had a cool
and
library,
werewolf
man.
Stories.
I don't think we had a cool library like that.
Well, we had the town library, the elementary library. If you got permission, you can go to the middle school or high school library. So we had a lot of libraries in my town.
We had one. It was horrible.
Oh no!
It had hardly any. They had one book on wolves. One.
That's
terrible. And I must have taken it out like 10 times. It was called Wolf. And it was this big book about conservation and had eagles stuff in it about eagles at the time.
It's like a book on colors called
Colors. It was from the 70s. And it was the only one they had. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I wanted to buy it because I kept taking it out so many times. They wouldn't let me though. It was a big book, yeah.
That's something that I realize is I've always been drawn to like wolves and werewolves. I remember like wolf books being something that I've always attached to. And like it kind of went on like that and didn't really display in a lot of ways other than those neat little things.
Like your interests.
Right.
Yeah.
But about the time I started working at a Boy Scout camp, because I was in Boy Scouts, and like the camping definitely helped, I think, with a lot of stuff. But I went to Boy Scout camp, and I was an assistant counselor for 1 year at Indian Lore, and then I was...
That's cool.
I I was like a co-counselor for another year. Like I could like actually do all the stuff for it.
Wow.
And my first year there, I was 14. Not really much came of it spiritually, other than you're gonna think this is funny because it's absolutely ridiculous.
Okay.
Like
I'm still grabbing my shake. But...
I got to come home every weekend. And we'd get home on Friday night, and I'd stay up and watch Adult Swim on Cartoon Network.
What? That wasn't... Oh.
Yes, I'd stay up and watch Adult Swim on Cartoon
Wait,
Network.
how old were you?
14.
Oh.
Because, I was away all week. I'd get home and I'd just binge on TV.
Oh, man, you had cool parents.
And then,
We didn't even have that.
one show came on Adult Swim called Wolf's Reign. And for anyone that's not familiar, it's an anime that surrounds a group of wolves that can project a human form around themselves in a post-apocalyptic world.
I saw it was really cool.
Yeah, and like that's how they survived.
You
And
introduced
I really, really connected with that. Like the concept of a wolf inside a human shell. And like the wolves, like the characters felt right. And something about it just felt inherently right and felt great. So thinking back on like the wolves and the werewolf stuff and things like that, I started digging around on the internet and looking for ways to basically become a werewolf. And like looking up spellcraft and exactly. I know now that it's
I
like
did the
complete
same
and total
thing.
junk.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
looking up like how to become a werewolf and werewolfism, lycanthropy, and stuff like that. That's kind of how I That's kind of how I got into like paganism and earth-based religion and stuff, is like through spellcrafting and stuff like that. And it wasn't for a little while that, it came to the realization. At that point, I had been poking around on alt.horror.werewolves, or AHWW.
That was classic. Like 1990s?
Yeah,
early 2000s.
Early, mid-1990s. At about the time that I was getting into it was like 2004. So the message board was totally dead. Like nobody was posting on it. Maybe one every 6 months or so, and it was shut down shortly after I found it. But I definitely went through it and like checked all the archive stuff and found a lot of terms and a lot of things. And I think that was the first time I heard the term Therian or Therianthropy. So I started expanding my internet searches, and I found Boom Shift was specifically a Therian forum. I found that, and that was active for about 2 years. I found Werelist at about the same time and started poking around there.
I remember that. I was on there a lot. I wasn't a member. I was just
when I was there, Werelist was... there was a separate section for Therians and a separate one for Otherkin. They were very, very separate. Like, related, but like a big separation. So I identified was more of the Wolf Therian kind of thing. Yeah. And just sort of ignored the Otherkin for a while.
Same here.
And for a period of years, did a lot of like soul searching and meditation and things like that. Really, really started to experience what I recognize now as shifts and shifting. So I can definitely tell when my mindset had changed. I experienced and had a way to describe sensory shifts, which are like your senses of perception. They alter and you pick up more things. Phantom shifting, like experiencing phantom limbs and stuff like that. That never really happened before in a way that I could recognize. I just felt weird. But now that I had terms and descriptions of all this stuff, I had names to apply to the things I was feeling.
Yeah.
So, like, I definitely identified with that.
Yeah.
And then pretty much went through high school exploring that and exploring myself. My second year in Boy Scout camp, my co-counselor, the Indian Lord counselor, he was basically somewhat of a spiritual leader in one of the nearby Native American reservations. He had a history in totemism and shamanism and things like that, and sort of helped guide me in a lot of soul searching and meditation. They didn't call it meditation, but that's basically what it is.
Yeah.
And that really helped ground me and connect with the animal side of things, like a lot, compared to, basically reading things on the internet and copying.
Yeah, you were lucky with that, having that guidance in person. Like, I didn't have any of that.
I know I was lucky, and that's why, going through high school and experiencing all this, I was very grounded. I didn't have a lot of the problems that a lot of people do with self-doubt and things. I knew who I was because I had someone to like help show me some of what I was and who I was.
Like, how do you think it has affected you in a positive or negative ways, or maybe more positive, negative, I hope, but...
Well, it's definitely been more positive than negative. That's something, like, going through college and, like, tail end of high school, it didn't really affect me on a day-to-day basis. It was a lot more personal stuff, like experienced mental shifting and experienced shifts, but I just didn't share that with anyone. It didn't really affect my day-to-day living. That was just something that I experienced, and like I just knew who I was, and I've always been in like a better mindset than a lot of people around me. And about that age, because I knew who I was, and everyone knows that high schoolers kind of struggle with that.
Yeah.
That and young college students, they struggle with that.
Yeah, I did in college especially.
And just having that peace of mind of knowing and that there were others like me went a long way. Today, I wouldn't say that it affects my living on a daily... Well, it doesn't. Because at the time I experienced more individual shifting. Like, I would have a definitive mental shift, and then I would be, I would be the wolf. And then I would revert back, and then I'd be the human. But I think over years of coming to terms with that and experiencing that and shifting so frequently and doing all these exercises to connect with the wolf and make sure that, yes, this is who I am and it is part of me. And over the years, I feel like that I'm always sort of partially shifted. Like, I've heard it called a vacillant therian.
Yeah.
So, like, think of it like a scale. On one side is human, on one side is wolf, and you're always on a spectrum somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
So,
I'm going to move my chair. Sorry, it was too close to you.
That's fine.
Okay.
At any given time, I'm between 15 and 25% wolf. And that affects my daily thoughts. Like, I am a much more in-the-moment person than a lot of people. I want to do something, and I just kind of do it. I'm generally fairly alert. A lot of people have been asking me, like, have you been in the military? Have you gone to prison?
Really?
Yes, like, no joke, because I'm very alert. Like, I have an observant posture, and my head's always up, and I'm looking around and paying attention to stuff. And
that's really interesting.
It's not really anything that directly affects my life. It's just the little things and how I perceive stuff.
Yeah.
I have learned recently to take that, like, in the moment living stuff and actually, like, increase my work productivity.
Yeah.
Because, well, I work manufacturing now, so what happens is I've got, like, these things I have to do in a specific order. So I'm not as bored because it's easier for me to focus on what I'm doing with my hands at the moment and just bounce back and forth between everything. Instead of a lot of my coworkers get into that mindless mindset where they just go through the motions
It's
and
like
their brain drifts off.
I have to read a book or something because I can't. Like, I'm not as interested in what I'm doing with my hands. Like, I know what I need to do, but I'm not like that.
Like, my focus, it only lasts so long, but because I'm changing what I'm doing all the time, I've sort of learned to harness the wolf thinking of that and just be like, I've got this, I'm going to do it, and then it's like, I'm going to do this next.
Yeah.
Now I'm doing this. Now I'm doing this. Now I'm doing this, and just, like, keep going down the line and do it.
Yeah.
And that's really the biggest thing. Other than that, I still like camping, and I need to get out more.
Yeah, I know. So I'm like, we're going on a camping trip this summer. We're going to go on, like, 2 camping trips. I discovered my theoranthropy almost around the same time as yours. So it's like,
like age-wise or year-wise? Because for me, it was around, 1990. Well, discovering theoranthropy around 2004.
Well, okay, so maybe I can modify that. Mine was 2002, but I'm also a little bit older than you, so age now. Like, I was 17 that summer. But before that, growing up myself, I did grow up in the country. For me, it was just like going outside a lot. In the winter, I like to play sled dog a lot. I'd play these fantasy animal characters with my sisters, and we did a lot of pretend. I loved books that had anthropomorphic animals, and animals, like stuffed animals that were realistic, were much, like, I loved them better. I really didn't like them when they were more humanistic. And I would get yelled at a lot because I used to play, like, I would play dog under the table. My parents would be like, "You're not a dog," you know? And, like, I was only, like, 4 years old. I don't even remember this. And I grew up in a very conservative family, so the night I shifted, I was outside just enjoying. It was midnight. I think it was the 4th of July, and we weren't able to see the fireworks because they were far away, and I was listening to them, and it was a beautiful summer night. It was a full moon, and I was like, I want to be outside under the moon because I love the moon. I always loved it, even as a child, and, like, there's something beautiful. It was just beautiful. I always loved nature, so, and I just remember, like, I was howling. We had woods and field, and I was just out there by myself in the pitch black, howling, and nothing. There was no response. No coyotes called back. I was disappointed. But then, like, suddenly, something in me kind of opened up, I guess, in a spiritual or mental way. I think I was going into some kind of meditation without knowing it through my just being in that calm setting with the...
Just sitting out and
I was
enjoying
standing
nature.
out there. Yeah, I wasn't even sitting. I was standing up and...
When you're out and enjoying
in the
nature,
middle of the,
just
listening
living.
to the crickets and the
Living in
right.
the moment.
Nobody cared where my mother, she didn't care I was out there like at midnight. I'm 7, you know, and I'm out there howling away, and then all of a sudden I don't feel like a human. Like I was just like on all fours, and I knew something was different about how I was thinking. I'd never had this before. And I was alone when this happened. Nobody was out there with me, and we have a really big yard, so I knew where I was going, even in the dark. And I remember we had cats too. I remember chasing one of our cats. I just had this urge to go after it, and of course it ran for its life. And this probably didn't last long, this first shift, maybe 10 minutes. I don't know. I didn't have a clock on me, like a watch or anything. It just kind of, swept over me. It was mental.
It just kind of happened and then didn't.
Yeah, and then it kind of just faded out. Like, and I was back to myself, just kind of like, what was that? Oh my, I was like, I was a little scared. I thought, was that like an evil demon spirit? Did I call some animal spirit remember, because I came from a Christian background, so I was like, that was the time when everyone's saying yoga's bad, New Age this is bad.
Was that about the time that there was really that heavy push against Harry Potter because of witchcraft and wizardry and stuff?
A little later than that. This was 2002. Mm-hmm. So that came a little earlier on. Anyway, so I was kind of closed off, and I was still wondering about spirituality and questioning my own faith. I started going on the internet, and I started to really look up this idea. I don't even remember what I typed in to discover about, like, how I learned about theory entropy itself, but I did come across quite a few of the same sites that you did, Fel. And I remember reading people's, like, profiles about their theory entropy, their personalities. I think they call them wear cards.
I never got into the wear cards thing.
I did. I wanted one so bad. I wanted to have one of my own.
That was something that I never really got into, so I'm still fuzzy on what that is.
It's basically, it was just like describing your stereotype, like what the animal was, your species, everything to eye color, to fur color, the name of your animal,
Mm-hmm. So a short little description.
Yeah, and then like their personality type. And you could get one if you were like on this forum for a certain amount of months, like a membership kind of thing.
Was it specifically attached to one forum?
I think it was, and I can't remember what it was now because I never really kept track of what they were. But it wasn't around very long, mm-hmm. and I was too scared to sign up for anything. And
mm-hmm.
I was really secretive about that part of myself, because my sisters, I didn't want anyone to know about it because I didn't understand it. I thought, what if it's I started to realize it's not a spiritual, like, outside spirit, nothing, demonic or something.
Right.
It came from within.
You didn't have quite the guidance that I
had. Nothing. And then there's church, and I'm like, oh man, like, I wonder. And it was just very conflicting for me, So I still went to church and everything, like a good Catholic girl, and, but that was a separate part of my life,
Mm-hmm.
And, so I did go through a lot of loneliness with that part of myself. That part of me longed for another kind of theory, and preferably another canine
validation and companionship, someone that knows and understands, so you're not keeping this secret.
Because when I would shift, I was just deeply lonely and sad.
Like, how is that incorporated into your daily life? And how is that, like, nowadays?
It's got,
You've got at least
I moved away.
one in-person friend.
Yeah, I mean, then I met you only, like, recently, 2 years ago, really.
Mm-hmm.
Or a year ago? I don't know. But that really helped a lot because I could just be that part of myself more, like, let it express itself, and it's become more incorporated into my human personality in a more positive way that I welcome more. I used to not be so open to it because, so...
You're not repressing it, basically.
Yeah, and
I'm
just like,
being you.
Nobody would really understand. I tried to tell some people about it because I wanted to share that, but some people understood and some people were like, I don't want to understand.
Yeah, basically, like, I did tell my in-laws when I got married to my wife, and I told them, basically, I feel that spiritually and mentally I'm part wolf. And, like, they took the spiritual thing very, very well. They didn't understand it, but, it was at least enough of an explanation, especially with modern alternative religions, that they just didn't ask too many questions.
Yeah.
So, like, people kind of know. They don't know in detail everything that it is, but they kind of know.
So you asked me, like, I mean, how does it affect me? I mean, it's definitely in the present a heck of a lot more than I'm a warrior and I'm a planner and I'm always thinking ahead on a human level. I'm like, what about next week? What about this thing? And, like, it doesn't shut up. But that part of me just, that always pushed away, and I'm like, I enjoy that part of the wolf, like, wants to go outside and, likes the snow. It's not bothered by the cold. It thinks it's fun, like in the summer, and I don't know, it doesn't care about what time it is, and like there's just like almost like a childlike in a way,
more in the moment enjoyment. In a moment, it does and doesn't have a daily effect because I'm at peace with myself, and because of that, I know that I generally have a better state of mind and peace of mind than a lot of people that are still struggling with that. And really knowing myself, because I know this is part of myself. That's something that I have that I feel comfortable with on a daily basis. I just have a better baseline for my daily mental function than I would if I didn't know about that.
I have this relationship, I realized. It's a part of me that I need to nurture because it's looked out for me. It's a beautiful thing, and I would be very sad if it went away and, in some form. So
it's part of your identity. It's part of who you are. It's part of who I am. And that's like denying, oh, hey, look, I hate the color blue, or I don't like the color blue. I do. I like the color blue.
Me too.
But that's like, it's like, why tell yourself you're something that you're not, or that you like something that you don't, or that you don't like something that you do. It's just like counterintuitive. And we both feel that we're Wolftharians, but we have different experiences, and we found things in different ways, and we grew up with different communities of therianthropy and finding them and exploring, and we're both just as valid for that.
Yeah.
That's something that everyone's going to have a different origin. They're going to have a different understanding of what it means to be a Therian or otherkin, and no one can really tell you that you're wrong in yours because they are all different. There is no baseline. There is nothing the same. The biggest thing is to be true to yourself. Don't disbelieve in yourself. Other people may not believe you, but that's not as important as what you believe of yourself.
Yeah. I mean, it all goes back to perception and reality, and everyone's, we all live in the same world, but, I think to some degree reality is subjective, but it doesn't make it any less valid. Right. In a person's experience of, when they wake up in the morning and go to bed, like what their days, the day to day.
Your reality is different from my reality, is different from my wife's reality, is different from our listeners' reality. Everyone's different, and there's no way to say that you're wrong.
This is really long, so but thanks for listening.
Yes, thank you very much for listening to us.
If you got to this point, we're really grateful.
Very much so. Thanks again for giving us a shot, and keep going. Keep continuing to
Yep.
explore your inner wild and explore who you are.
And we'll be here. So thanks, all you wonderful creatures, great and small.
Thank you, animals. Bye-bye.
Okay, that does it for today's show. We want to know what you think, so tweet us, bark at us, howl at us, whatever, on our Twitter page at inner_wild, or you can email us at innerwildpodcast@gmail.com and visit our blog page as well at innerwildpodcast.blogspot.com. The song you're hearing is by C. Padman and mixed by Lucky Little Raven, thanks to freesound.org. Our opening theme was from Kevin Hartnell, and going under Rotten Coil, also from freesound.org. It was mixed and edited by me, Autumn, and I had additional help as well with today's show from Fel Gray. Thanks, everyone! All you wonderful creatures, great and small.